With the Mets opening day roster nearly set, who deserves to make this team? Has Luisangel Acuna really earned his spot? I'm going to talk about that and so much more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Over the weekend, while I was gone at my cousin's wedding, a lot went down for the New York Mets. It's that time of year where you're a week out or less than a week out from opening day, and some decisions are made. Players are informed that they will not make the team, and others are told they will make the team. So we have a lot of different subsets of the roster to talk about today, but we're going to open up the show with the infield because I think the most constantly discussed topic throughout spring training, particularly on this show, has been surrounding Luisangel Acuna and Brett Baty. Who is going to make the team? Who is going to get that backup utility infield job was the beginning of the conversation. Then Jeff McNeil went down, and all of a sudden, it really opened the door for both of these guys to make the team. But if you remember, at the beginning of spring training, it really was going to be one or the other. Or if you're Anthony DeComo a couple weeks ago, Donovan Walton was the dark horse that was going to make it because you needed that backup shortstop. Well, Donovan Walton was informed over the weekend that he will not be making the team, which all but secured Luisangel Acuna's spot in the roster, although the Mets are still looking for a right-handed infielder. Maybe Jose Iglesias would be a nice fit, although he has made the Padres roster, so that one's out. I will touch on that a little bit in the next segment. But when it comes to Acuna versus Baty, which now has just been Acuna and Baty in a platoon, these guys have made the roster in completely different ways. Brett Baty has earned his spot. And if you remember, when I predicted that Baty was going to get the backup utility infielder job at the start of camp, I said he was best suited to win a job in spring training. I never said, he's going to be a better player in the big leagues than Luisangel Acuna. To me, it's still too early to judge that. I don't even know which way I would lean because Acuna, as I've said time and again, has such a high floor because of his defensive ability. I mean, he is just going to back into 2 wins, if not 3 wins, with his defense and speed alone when you talk about wins above replacement. That is how talented he is with the glove and how much his speed is going to boost his overall value. He is just a great athlete. The question is going to be the bat. And the reason why I said Baty was going to be best suited to win a job is because I just felt that he was primed and ready for this environment to go into spring training games and put up numbers. And what kind of numbers has he put up? He's been the best hitter in the Grapefruit League, Brett Baty has. You look at what he's done. 19 games played, hitting .347. He's gone 17 for 49 with 6 doubles, 1 triple, and 3 home runs. He's walked more than he struck out, 8 walks to 5 strikeouts, a 1.133 OPS to lead the Grapefruit League. And if you look at the results, it was 5 games where he hit over 500. And then I wouldn't even call it struggles, but the results weren't really there for a little bit in the middle of camp for Brett Baty. But he finished camp super strong. He's gone 7 for 10 over his last 4 games with 4 walks, 3 of them coming on Sunday where he maybe got the Barry Bonds treatment as the top hitter in the Grapefruit League, getting all those free passes. And he has just been unbelievable. And over the weekend, you're seeing Brett Baty defensive highlights. It's a diving stop here, a glove toss there, a double play here, home runs, doubles, triples. He's just on an absolute tear and is earning his place as the primary second baseman with Jeff McNeil on the IL to start the season. Acuna, the other half of that platoon, he so far this spring in 20 games played, he's hitting 235. He's gone 12 for 31, 1 extra base hit, 8 strikeouts to 1 walk, a 519 OPS. Now, spring numbers aren't everything, but you pair that with the large sample size of what he did in AAA last season, and it is fair to have some questions about Acuna as a hitter. Now, when I polled you, the audience, 10 days ago, I asked you who would start the most games at second base this year. Would it be Acuna? Would it be Brett Baty? Or would it be Jeff McNeil? The audience 10 days ago said Acuna, 44% of you. 30% said Jeff McNeil. 25% said Brett Baty. I'm going to poll you again today. Ask the exact same question. And I wonder if those numbers are going to flip or if they're going to stay the same. McNeil still projected to come back in April. So this is not a lengthy IL stay. At some point, the Mets will have to choose Baty or Acuna and option somebody down unless another injury pops up. So that brings me to the third deck effect. This is a topic that was the center of an article for Anthony DiComo on MLB.com talking about Luisangel Acuna, but it pertains to both of these guys. Because if you want to know what the third deck effect is traditionally, look no farther than Brett Baty, a guy who's been great in the minor leagues, but you put him in a big league environment and he struggles to produce. That's what that third deck effect is, because there's not a minor league ballpark out there that has that third deck. It's a different feel when you go from a minor league ballpark that seats anywhere from 5 to, I guess, 10,000 at most, really, to a ballpark that can seat 40,000. And so Baty has struggled going into those environments. What DiComo writes about, and it has some really interesting quotes from Francisco Lindor in here, is how Acuna is someone that Mets type, as he says, believe could have the opposite gene, where you put him on the big stage and all of a sudden he shines, because guess what he did last year? He showed up when it mattered most, when he got thrust into the starting shortstop job when Lindor went down. Here's what Lindor had to say about Acuna in this article. And these quotes, to me, paint Acuna in a pretty brutal light, honestly. He says, I think he plays bored in spring training. If the lights come on, then he's good. Last year in the minors, he was bored probably. He doesn't get amped for it. He says, it's rare when you see elite big leaguers or good big leaguers dominate the minor leagues. They just get bored. And then they eventually figure it out and say, I guess I've got to do a little bit more to get called up. And then they get called up and it wakes them up. Continues to say, he acts like he don't care. And when you act like you don't care, yeah, you're bored. He's not putting everything he's got into it. It doesn't feel like he's being challenged. This is your captain of the New York Mets, a guy that takes everything seriously. Lindor hasn't had the best spring when it comes to the offensive stats, but I have seen him leg out a double in a spring training game. I've seen him trying to steal bases in spring training games. I've seen him play great defense at shortstop still in spring training games. Acuna's gotten sloppy in the field, he's gotten sloppy on the base pass, and he hasn't hit. But I still will tell you wholeheartedly, the Mets' best chance to win on opening day is to start Acuna at second base, because Framber Valdez will get the nod for the Astros, their ace, a left-handed pitcher. That'd be a tougher matchup for Brett Baty, and the Mets are going to counter with Clay Holmes as their starting pitcher, a ground ball pitcher. So having Acuna's defense at second base, with Holmes making his first start since, was it 2018 or 2019 at the big league level, which is going to be tough for him, to make sure you secure all of those early in the, at bat outs that he can get on ground balls. You want to get all of those. And Acuna is the guy to do that at second. He's the right-handed bat that is a better fit for the matchup against Valdez. And I would not be surprised at all if the lights were on, as they're saying, it's opening day, and Luisangel Acuna goes 3 for 4, and he steals a base, and maybe he hits a home run, and he turns some double plays, and he's awesome. I mean, I could see that happening. But does it not rub you the wrong way at least a little bit that this kid can't find it within himself to try in spring training? If Jeff McNeil was not hurt, he'd be going right back to AAA. You really think if the decision came down to it, even though Acuna is a more ideal platoon partner for Jeff McNeil, righty, lefty. That's what you want. Better defender, all of these things. He makes more sense on the Mets roster over Brett Baty. But do you think that with the spring training these two guys have had, the Mets would be able to look Brett Baty in the eye and say, you're going to AAA and Acuna has made the team? You kidding me? And I think about last year. Oh, he was bored in AAA. Remember, there was 81 qualified hitters in that league that the Mets play in AAA, the International League, or is it the Eastern League? Regardless, doesn't matter. I think it's the International League. But regardless, the league that the Syracuse Mets play in, of the 81 qualified hitters, when you look at OPS, Acuna ranks 78th. 654 OPS. Brutal offensively, really, for an offense-driven league. Oh, he was bored. If you weren't bored and you outplayed Jose Iglesias and Mark Vientos in April and May, Acuna could have been at the big league level last year, theoretically. If he had outplayed Jose Iglesias, he could have gotten that spot. Now they went with the veteran. It made sense. It all worked out for the Mets. But I'm just saying, where is that arrogance? Where's that entitlement coming from that, the minor league stuff doesn't matter? When the lights are on, I'm going to show up. Like, what's that mentality? And then in the article, it says Lindor said that Acuna could be a 10-time All-Star. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration because a 10-time All-Star is a Hall of Famer. But what he's saying is this guy has all the potential in the world. Yes, you're Ronald Acuna Jr.'s little brother. But that doesn't make you Ronald Acuna Jr. That doesn't just grandfather you in. You didn't earn anything. The name on your back doesn't mean anything. And the fact that he just is bored by spring training when you're fighting for a roster spot, I don't know. That just doesn't make me like Acuna that much. Granted, he's electric. We're going to watch him and we're going to root for him. And I hope he has a ton of success. And I hope that as the lights go on him on opening day, he never lets go. And when I say that this guy is a player that I look at right now and I say, I don't know if he's going to be a utility infielder off of the bench for a long time or a super utility infielder or super utility player that gets in the lineup most days, but his versatility is one of his best assets, which it very well could be, but he's able to hit enough that he's still a regular just at multiple spots, or if he is an all-star second baseman. Like, the range of outcomes goes all over the place, and I probably lean somewhere towards the middle. I don't necessarily view him as a perennial all-star up the middle at second base. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he grabs second base and never lets it go. I really do. But man, I don't really love hearing that he's bored in spring training and bored in Syracuse. When are you fighting for your spot? And yeah, if the lights show up and the third deck effect is real and Brett Baty turns into a pumpkin, Acuna might be better. But right here, right now, who deserves a spot on the Mets roster? Who has earned that spot? Who has earned the playing time? Who has earned the ceremonial nod of being the Mets starting second baseman on opening day? It's Brett Baty, but you're also trying to win. And Acuna's probably your best chance to win on opening day. I think in the long run, this is going to work out while Jeff McNeil's on the IL because both of these guys are going to get those early season opportunities, and then you'll make the decision. And if Brett Baty through the first 2 weeks of the season isn't hitting and Acuna comes out like a rocket, then the roster fit might make more sense that Baty does go down. But who am I rooting for more in light of these quotes from Lindor and what we've seen in spring? I'm rooting for Brett Baty to be the Mets second baseman this year. And I'm curious what you guys will think on that poll today because it is really interesting to see who is going to start the most games at second base. I don't know if my money would be on Brett Baty, but I think that's what I'm rooting for. I still probably think it's going to be Jeff McNeil. Regardless, though, I want to go to other parts of this roster that we've learned about. There's a backup catcher that we feel pretty confident in now. Alex Canario seems like he's on the outside looking in for an outfield spot. I'm going to go through the final position players in just a minute here. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Just Ingredients. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. What I like about Just Ingredients is, for one, the taste. I really do like the strawberry limeade as my pre-workout. Gives me the extra boost that I need. Whether you're recovering from a workout or you need an energy boost going into one, their grass-fed whey protein and pre-workout delivers real results, and it's also wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk. If you want to try Just Ingredients, visit justingredients.us/Bryce Harper and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off your order. And for more wellness tips, follow at just.ingredients on Instagram. At the start of this offseason, I set a goal that we would try to get to 13,000 subscribers on this channel by opening day. We are within 400. We're running out of time. I don't know if we're going to get there, but I appreciate all of you who have subscribed and continue to subscribe. So if you're watching today's video on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that red subscribe button to help us get closer and closer to that eventual goal. Now, as we talk about the Mets position player group, everything for the most part has been decided. It appears like Baty and Acuna are locked into those final infield spots. The outfield pretty much set. The one thing that was up for debate, who was going to be the backup catcher when Francisco Alvarez went down with that hamate bone surgery. They had to pull that bone after he broke it. They were going to need a backup catcher as Luis Torrens got vaulted up to the starting catcher position. Alvarez, his earliest possible return would be April 21st. That would be the 6 weeks, the short end of that 6 to 8 week timetable. I think we'll see him back by May. I think he's the type of guy that I just won't count out hitting the earliest end of a timetable. So I feel like we'll see him pretty soon into the season, but you're going to need a catcher for about the first month. It was a three-man race once the injury happened. It was Jackson Reetz, Chris Williams, and Hayden Senger. Reetz and Williams were probably the favorites because they have more experience, in the upper levels of the minor leagues and have shown more at the bat. So you thought they might have been the guys that could grab a spot. But Hayden Senger, longtime farmhand who has always been heralded for his glove, a guy that was never even necessarily expected to get to the point where he would make his MLB debut because he's not much of a hitter. But you know what? He has worked hard in this organization for a long time. He knows the pitchers well. He gives the Mets a great defensive backup catcher, and that is what you want primarily. Seems like he will make the team as he is the last man in camp. Jackson Reetz was informed over the weekend that he will not make the team. Chris Williams had been informed about a week before that. So this is Senger's job unless the Mets are able to pick up a veteran catcher at the 11th hour that they like more. But I'm hoping that they don't at this point. It is a great story that he's going to make this roster. As we talked about in the past, you're probably talking about maybe 5-6 starts at most. So it's not like the bat's going to kill you in those starts. And ultimately, he should be a really good defensive option to work with this pitching staff early on in the season. And then he stays on your 40-man roster, and you have the ability to option him up and down throughout the year. And you're just starting a service time clock. So it actually is a good use of a 40-man roster spot that could help the Mets beyond even this year. So I like that ended up being the result of that discussion. The Mets, again, are still in the market for a right-handed infielder. If another one pops up on waivers that they can grab here as teams make their cuts, a guy that won't be on waivers is Jose Iglesias, who got his $3 million from the Padres as it's been announced that he will make the team. No surprises there. You might ask, did the Mets make a mistake not signing Iglesias? In retrospect, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, I'd say that it was a mistake when you're talking about a $3 million contract to get a guy back that meant so much to your team that would make your roster better on opening day. I think the Mets are better tomorrow if it's Iglesias instead of Acuna on this roster for the impact that he'd bring as a veteran leader. And you could say the Mets would be better with Iglesias instead of McNeil this year because the best platoon might have been Baty and Iglesias, but we had no idea that Baty was going to have a potential breakout in spring. We'll see if that carries over. With all that said, though, when Jeff McNeil comes back, if the Mets had signed Iglesias, it's Baty who will lose a spot. And if Baty keeps this up in the season and actually continues to hit, that's the entire reason why you didn't sign Iglesias, is because you did not want to stifle the development of your young players. And so ultimately, when you think about that long-term view and you think about it from more of a macro perspective of the 2025 season and the opportunities that not signing Iglesias will present to a Baty, to an Acuna, to eventually to a Mauricio or a Jet Williams, I still see why they didn't make that signing. First month of the season, could the Mets have used Jose Iglesias, though? Absolutely. Now, one guy that is probably going to be the last cut in camp on the position player front is Alex Canario, as the Mets are going to wait into the 11th hour, if not the 11th hour and 59th minute, to try to slide this guy through waivers. A 24-year-old former top prospect the Mets acquired in that trade with the Cubs for like $100,000 or whatever it was, to pick up a guy that has had actually limited MLB success. He's only played 21 games, though, who has a ton of power and is athletic to play in the corner outfield spots. So the Mets picked him up, figured why not? And if there was an injury to Starling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, Jesse Winker, one of your center fielders even, if it was Tyrone Taylor or Jose Siri, if there was an injury to an outfielder, Canario would have made the team. And Winker, Nimmo, Marte, all of them had injuries in spring, but they're all healthy now, and they all appear good to go for opening day. Canario likely won't make the team, but he's done enough in the past week to get picked up from another team because he's been an animal last week. 8 for 10, 4 walks compared to 2 strikeouts over his last 6 games played. The first of those 6 games, he went 1 for 1 with the home run and 3 walks against the Marlins. The last game, Sunday, went 3 for 4 with 2 home runs, one of them being a grand slam, again against the Marlins. Look at the numbers. He's hitting .314 in spring training, .429 on base, .629 slug, and OPS over 1,000. But a week ago, he was hitting .120 with a .214 on base and a .160 slug. He started off spring training for the Mets going 3 for 25 with 12 strikeouts. So I'm sorry, I will not be losing sleep over Alexander Canario, because covering the Mets since 2019, this is going to be my 7th season doing this. I've seen and bought into the Nick Plumbers of the world and the Khalil Lees before that. And if you want to talk about prospects, even someone like Jalen Palmer, uber athletic guys that can show promise here and there, but might not put it all together. And Canario could be the exception to the rule. He is legitimately a good athlete with a lot of power that could make a big league impact this year. Absolutely. But look at the home runs he hit on Sunday, for example. One slider that, yes, it ended up down and in, but to me, that was put on a tee for him. I think it was a little bit of a hanger, and he was able to put a great swing on it. Then you had a fastball that was belt high in from 4A Marlins pitchers. Guys that are 26, 27, not a ton of big league experience. Guys that might make the Marlins team just because their depth isn't great, particularly in the bullpen. But none of these home runs super impressive. Now, for the same token, you say, well, what's Brett Baty been doing all spring? I get it. Spring numbers are spring numbers. But my point is, I am not going to overreact and say, man, I can't believe the Mets are going to lose Alexander Canario. Because when they picked him up, it was very, very likely that this would be the outcome. The one thing that could have changed it is that there was an injury to one of your outfielders. Otherwise, Winker was always going to make the team. Marte was always going to make the team. Nimmo was always going to make the team. Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri were always going to make the team. And I think Juan Soto had a good shot at it too. So, yeah, Canario's on the outside looking in. And it sucks that you're probably going to lose him because he had a great week. If he kept doing what he had been doing, if instead of now hitting 314, if he was still hitting 120, if instead of going 3 for 25 with 12 strikeouts like he did, he continued on to that. And so maybe it was, 4 for 35 with 19 strikeouts. If that happened, then yeah, you might pass him through waivers and he might end up in Syracuse and he might hit 20 home runs. And at some point, you might call on him. But there was never going to be a big league opportunity, or at least a significant one, for Alexander Canario and the New York Mets. Unless an injury opened one up, and yeah, Marte could go down tomorrow, and then that opportunity presented to Canario, and he could go down 2 weeks into the season, and you won't have him because Canario is on the Pirates or something. But for now, it sort of is what it is. Do I think at this moment today, Alex Canario is a better hitter than Starling Marte? The Mets would be better served cutting a respected veteran, which will set aside the actual personal impact of that, because I think Marte, as a veteran leader who is very close with your new superstar in Juan Soto, I think that's a really nice guy to have in that clubhouse. But if you're just talking about who is the better fit to be the right-handed complement to Jesse Winker at DH, do I think Canario is better? No, I still don't. I really don't. Starling Marte brings a ton of experience, and when the games mattered most last year, he was a top 5 hitter on the Mets in the playoffs. You had Pete Alonso and Mark Vientos, who put up the best numbers. You had Francisco Lindor, who obviously was consistent the whole way through. And Jesse Winker had a monster postseason. Then who's next? I mean, Nimmo had his moments. But you really look at it, Starling Marte had a lot of success in the games that mattered. And now he's in the perfect role for a guy with some bum knees. He is the short side of a DH platoon. And if he doesn't play a single inning in the outfield this year, maybe, just maybe, he'll stay healthy and be an impact guy. But regardless, I got to talk about the pitchers too. It's a jam-packed show today. So there's a lot to be decided before opening day. Who is going to get the final bullpen spot between Max Kranick and Huascar Brazaban? I'm going to talk about that and what has already been decided for this team in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is simple to use. So when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. And if you want to look beyond just March Madness, MLB futures are here. They have been here. If you want to bet on the Mets to win the World Series or bet on Juan Soto to win MVP, you can find all of that over at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you are an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets Insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk about the Mets bullpen. A lot has been decided. We'll actually touch on the rotation as well. That has been locked in. So when it comes to the Mets rotation, Tylor Megill, inevitable as he is, has made the team. He earned a spot despite having an option. So he is going to be part of the open day rotation. He's actually going to get the ball in game 2. It'll be Clay Holmes game 1, Tylor Megill game 2, and Griffin Canning has grabbed onto that other spot. He will start game 3. David Peterson will start game 4 against the Marlins, and then Kodai Senga will start the 5th game before it turns back around to Clay Holmes. Eventually, when the Mets need a 6th starter, Paul Blackburn will get inserted into that rotation. For now, he is in the bullpen as a long man who can piggyback any of these guys. What Carlos Mendoza did say is that they have to get Blackburn, up on his pitch count. They have to keep him stretched out. So if Paul Blackburn comes in the fifth inning of a game, he might finish that game. If he comes in the seventh inning, he's probably going to finish, and he might throw some extra pitches in the bullpen after the game because they have to be mindful of the fact that he will be in this rotation. Middle to end of April. April 18th, I think, is the date. We'll need a sixth starter. Now, things can change. Sean Manaea could have an expedited return on his timetable to come back from his, wasn't an oblique, right? He could come back and be that sixth starter, so to speak, and Blackburn can stay in the bullpen. You never know. But for now, that is the state of the rotation. Guys who won't make the bullpen, Genesis Cabrera, Chris Devanski, and Jose Urena were all informed they will not be making the team. Those are the final three non-roster invites. They optioned Tylor Zuber down to AAA. He's on the 40-man roster. Guy they got in the trade with the Rays last year that we've yet to see pitch in the big leagues, but we probably will at some point this season. He's got a really good sweeper. So we'll see him at some point. Danny Young will make the team. He was out of options. I wasn't sure if the Mets were going to DFA him or not, but he has made it. Jose Budo informed he was going to make the team. That one we knew. He's also out of options, and I just couldn't have seen them get rid of a valuable arm like Budo. Reed Garrett obviously deserves to be on the team from what he did last year. Had a good spring. He will make the team despite having an option. Edwin Díaz and Ryan Stanek were always going to make the team. And like I already said, Paul Blackburn's going to be in the bullpen. So you count them up. That is 6 of your 8 spots in your bullpen opening day. The big news was that Daniel Nunez was optioned. Now, if you haven't been listening to this show all spring training, you might have been surprised by that news because Daniel Nunez, at his best, might be the best reliever in this bullpen, or the second best to Edwin Díaz, or the third best to AJ Minter, but he is an electric arm. But as I've talked about all spring, it made sense to protect Nunez, put him in bubble wrap early, have him have a little bit of an extended spring, go to Syracuse, pitch on a schedule. So, hey, this week, Nunez, you're pitching Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. You go every other day. Or maybe it's Tuesday, Friday, and that's it. Tuesday and Friday. Those are your 2 days to pitch a week. We're going to keep you on Tuesday, Friday schedule. You're going to have off days between multiple off days between every outing for a month. And then we're going to start to rent. Who knows what that schedule and that plan is, but this is a guy that had a flexor tendon issue. Apparently he's fine. He's throwing, all is good. The last thing you want is for some major injury to pop up because he is too important to your MLB bullpen that Mendoza wants to call on a bunch, and he's either called on too much and he gets hurt, or he's not available enough. And then having him on the roster hinders you because you're putting one hand tied behind Mendoza's back. So he will be in AAA to start the year. The only question now is, will AJ Minter be on the IL as he continues to progress coming off the hip surgery he had in August, or if he's going to make the team? And the indications at this point are that he is going to be ready to go for opening day. He's going to pitch on Monday. If all goes well, I expect he is going to be part of the Mets opening day roster now. So with that said, Huascar Brazoban and Max Kranick are 2 guys vying for one spot. Kranick has been a breakout story this spring. 11 1/3 innings pitched. He's allowed 9 hits, 2 earned runs, walked just 1, compared to 14 strikeouts in 7 appearances. Elite stuff from Max Kranick, who's got a really good fastball that he pairs with a good slider, and that's sort of his main, he's your traditional, kind of fastball, breaking ball, fastball, slider. I think he's got multiple variations of the breaking ball, but it doesn't really matter. It really is predicated on that fastball that he can then pair with some breaking pitches that are going to get a lot of swing and miss, and it seems like he's able to rack up strikeouts and pound the zone, which you love in a reliever. To me, I think Kranick has earned this, but if you wanted to say Brazoban has, his numbers have been great as well. 8 appearances this spring, allowed 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 13 strikeouts to 6 walks. And he has the experience. He's the MLB veteran. 116 appearances out of a big league bullpen, career 3.79 ERA. Kranick has not pitched in the big league since 2022 when he was a starting pitcher, only has 11 appearances. So you have the experience of Brazoban or the upside of Kranick. I lean upside, but regardless, both of these guys are going to be part of the team, and both of these guys could be flipping, spots at Syracuse in the big leagues a lot this year because they are the multi-inning relievers that might be tasked with throwing, up to 45 pitches because, your starter got out of the game early and they had to carry a bigger workload, and then all of a sudden they're burned and the bullpen's tired and you need an arm. And Brazoban hasn't pitched in 2 days in Syracuse, so I'm sorry, Max. You're going back down because you have the roster flexibility. You have an option. And Brazoban comes up. And that might happen multiple times unless one of them just earns a spot where they're pitching and leverage, and Carlos Mendoza can't afford to be without them. So we'll see if that happens for either of these guys. Every chance that both of them are in the bullpen at the same time. And it could be at the start of the season if AJ Minter opens the year on the IL. But this is what I expect the Mets opening day roster to be. I have now made this graphic that I am fully anticipating being able to tweet out any day now when the Mets finalize these last couple of things. With Minter potentially going to make this team, I think you're looking at this bullpen of Edwin Díaz, AJ Minter, Ryan Stanek, Reed Garrett as your primary leverage guys, Jose Budo and Max Kranick as your multi-inning guys that could pitch in some leverage, Danny Young, a second lefty in your bullpen, Paul Blackburn is your long man, and then all the other guys we've talked about today fill out the rest of the roster. Nothing else would really surprise you if you're looking at this graphic, or if you aren't looking at the graphic and you're listening. It's everything we've been talking about, the rotation of Senga, Peterson, Holmes, Canning, Megill, Terrence and Senger as your backstops, Alonso, Lindor, Vientos, Baty, and Acuna in the infield, Soto, Nimmo, Siri, Tylor, Marte, and Winker in the outfield. And on the IL, Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, Jeff McNeil, and Francisco Alvarez. So that's what the Mets roster is likely going to be. Very well could be Brazoban instead of Kranick. If one of the outfielders goes down at the very end of camp, Canario might just make it. And the Mets are still going to be looking on the market. If they can get a better backup catcher than Hayden Senger, a veteran that they like, they might swoop in. If they can find a right-handed infielder that they like and they'd prefer to have Acuna develop more in AAA, they might do that. Otherwise, that's what you can expect the roster to look like. And I just can't wait for real baseball games to get played this week. One more spring training game, Mets, Yankees today, and then that is it. It's going to be a lot of fun to really get into this season. I can't wait to cover every single pitch of it with you guys on this show 7 days a week. We're not taking a single day off throughout this season. I appreciate all of you who have been longtime listeners of this show, and those of you who have found this show, maybe this off season, however you have chosen to watch, listen, consume the podcast, I appreciate it. If you are listening today, please follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, vote on the poll. Who do you think is going to start the most games at second base this year? You can find that. So make sure you do that as well. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. And after a second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. And Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.